Welcome to the deep dive. We sift through mountains of info, so you get the important stuff fast, you're busy, we get it, but you still want to be in the know.
Exactly, and that's what we do. Today, well, we're tackling something interesting, a resource with a, let's say, difficult reputation
hmm
that might just have a surprising future. We've gone through articles, research, looking at the unexpected link between coal and graphene.
Coal and graphene, right? It feels like worlds apart. When I think coal, I immediately picture, well, pollution, old power
Yeah.
plants, not exactly cutting edge.
And you're not alone. The numbers kind of back that up. There was a Pew Research study found 67% of Americans think the U.S. should focus on alternative energy.
That's a big majority.
It is. And only about, 32% favor expanding fossil fuels like coal. So the general vibe is definitely leaning away from it.
But wait, wasn't there another angle in that same study? Something
Yeah.
a bit more complex?
Ah, yes, good point. It also found 68% think the U.S. should actually keep using fossil fuels alongside renewables. So it's not quite get rid of it entirely for most people. It's more of a mix.
Okay, so it's nuanced. Not just anti-coal across the board, but maybe anti-relying solely on it.
Something like that. And, politics plays a huge role, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
The Pew data showed a pretty clear split. Republicans much more supportive of expanding coal mining, Democrats much less so. It's tied up in economics, identity, the whole package.
Definitely. But then you look globally, and it gets even more complicated, right? While some U.S. companies are planning phase-outs.
Yeah, like WEC Energy, Excel, they're talking 2030, 2032, some closures even sooner, like next year.
Right. But elsewhere, like China.
Totally different picture. Carbon Brief reported their new coal plant construction hit a 10-year high last year, despite all the renewable investments.
Wow, a 10-year high. That seems counterintuitive to the global climate push.
It does, and the analysis suggests things like long-term power deals, coal supply agreements. They basically lock in coal use. It's baked into the system over there.
So the transition isn't straightforward at all. It varies massively depending on where you look.
Exactly. And we can't forget the human cost side of traditional coal use, the health risks.
I mean air pollution near the plants.
Precisely. I saw a research protocol looking into that specifically. It's a serious, well-documented downside of burning coal for power.
Okay, so we've got the negative perception, the complex global picture, the health concerns. Standard stuff for coal, maybe? But you mentioned graphene. Where does that come in?
Right, this is where it pivots. What if coal wasn't just for burning? What if it was feedstock for something new?
Feedstock for graphene, that wonder material we heard so much about, Nobel Prize and all that.
That's the one. Isolated back in 2004. Its structure is the key thing. It's just a single layer of carbon atoms, one atom thick.
One atom. Okay, that's thin.
Incredibly thin. And that makes it super stronger than steel, they say, but really light. Plus, it's amazing at conducting electricity and heat.
So why isn't it everywhere already?
Well, traditionally, making it is kind of messy. You usually start with graphite, like in pencils, and peel off layers.
Okay.
But the processes often used pretty nasty chemicals, like sulfuric acid. Not ideal from an environmental standpoint.
Right, so great material, difficult birth, basically.
Kind of, but this is the potential game changer. Researchers, like a group at Virginia Tech, figured out a way to make graphene from coal.
Directly from coal.
How? They developed a method using mostly just nitric acid. It's apparently much more sustainable, avoids a lot of the really hazardous stuff.
Huh. So turning coal, this old world resource, into a building block for this futuristic material.
That's the idea. And it's moving beyond the lab. There are companies like Universal Matter Ltd. Actively working on this.
Universal Matter, what are they doing?
They're developing tech to convert U.S. coal into really high-quality graphene. We're talking like 1 to 5 layers thick, very few defects, super pure. The National Energy Technology Lab, NETL, they're tracking this.
And what would this coal graphene be used for?
All sorts of things. Energy storage, think bitter batteries, supercapacitors, sensors, lubricants, making plastics stronger, even building materials.
Hold on, building materials like graphene in concrete or walls?
Yeah, potentially. Graphene's strength-to-weight ratio is amazing. So companies like some Plastics EHC were looking at coal-based facade panels, lightweight infrastructure components.
Wow.
XMAT CCC is exploring concepts too. And get this, Rice University did a study suggesting a coal-based product could actually replace sand in concrete.
Replace sand. That's huge. Sand is a massive global resource issue.
Exactly. It could be a really big deal if it scales up, using a coal byproduct instead of mining sand.
Okay, my mind is slightly blown. What else? You mentioned composites.
Right. Mixing materials for better performance. The University of Kentucky, for instance, is working on turning coal into carbon fiber continuously. Big value add potential there for composites.
Carbon fiber from coal.
And then Ohio University and Pacific Northwest National Lab P&L, they're developing coal plastic composites. Think decking boards that are maybe cheaper, last longer, use coal directly.
Decking boards.
Okay.
That's very practical. And energy storage, you touched on that.
Yes. Carbon quantum dots, tiny particles, also derivable from coal, they show promise for boosting solar cells and supercapacitors because of their electronic properties.
So helping renewables, ironically.
Potentially, yeah. And graphene itself, being so conductive, is a hot area for next-gen batteries. Better capacity, faster charging, that's the hope.
So we're talking construction, composites, energy. This is way beyond just burning it.
Absolutely. And there's more. Conductive coatings, hyperlubricants to cut friction, reinforcing plastics. The list keeps growing.
You mentioned a company, Sagan, with a production line.
Yeah, they have a 300-ton seared Joule graphene line. They currently use carbon black, but apparently the tech could be adapted for anthracite coal, too.
And that Flash Joule Heating thing, that sounds fast.
It is. That's the work from James Tour's group at Rice, Flash Joule Heating, or FJH. They basically zap carbon materials with a jolt of electricity.
Zapping coal.
Or other carbon sources, yeah. And it turns into graphene very quickly, like milliseconds, high yields, potentially really low cost, maybe $100 a ton, they estimate. It's shown promise with coal as well.
That sounds incredibly efficient, almost sci-fi.
It kind of does. It opens up possibilities for using all sorts of carbon waste, potentially even. Well, the research paper even whimsically mentioned cremated remains just to show the versatility of turning carbon into graphene.
Okay, wow. Let's maybe stick to coal for now.
Mhm.
So who are the main players pushing this? You mentioned NETL, Universal Matter, the universities.
Right. NETL's Carbon Ore to Products program is definitely a hub. Then you have Universal Matter, some plastics, XMAT doing commercial development. The university research teams, Virginia Tech, Kentucky, Ohio U, Rice are crucial. Professor Tour's FJH work is obviously key. Sayan is scaling up production. It's becoming a real ecosystem.
And is the market for these kinds of advanced carbon materials actually growing, or is this all speculative?
Oh no, the market growth looks really strong. Projections for things like carbon nanotubes, which are similar in some ways, show double-digit annual growth, like over 16% CAGR expected by 2030. The whole advanced carbon materials sector is expanding. There's definite demand pull.
Okay, this is fascinating, but it feels optimistic. What are the catches, the challenges? It can't be that easy to just switch coal's role.
No, you're right to be cautious. It's still early days for large-scale, truly cost-effective graphene from coal. There are technical hurdles in scaling up these processes consistently and cheaply.
And the existing coal industry,
Yep.
the infrastructure, the jobs.
That's a huge piece of the puzzle. How do you transition? It needs investment, retraining, careful planning for those communities that depend on traditional coal mining. It's not just a tech switch, it's a socioeconomic one, too.
And what about steel? Doesn't steel making still need a specific type of coal?
Metallurgical coal, yeah. People are working on green steel without it, using hydrogen maybe, but that's facing its own scale and cost issues. So met coal likely still has a role for a while yet in steel. This graphene angle is more about thermal coal, the stuff usually burned for power.
Got it. And even with these new uses, the old environmental baggage of burning coal doesn't just disappear, right?
Absolutely not. This potential new life for coal as a material doesn't negate the very real environmental and health impacts of burning it for energy. Those concerns remain significant. This is about finding alternative, higher value uses for the resource itself.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the core idea is coal, facing decline and a bad rap in energy, might find a surprising new path as a raw material for graphene.
Exactly. This wonder material with applications from concrete to composites to electronics could actually be sourced from coal, potentially more sustainably than traditional methods.
It flips the script, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Coal as part of a high-tech future, not just a relic of the industrial past.
It really does. It's a potential second act that few probably saw coming.
So the thought to leave our listeners with, how might these technologies change how we view resources we thought we understood? If coal can become graphene, what other transformations are out there? What industries could be unexpectedly reshaped? Definitely something to keep an eye on.
For sure. A fascinating space to watch.